Hello, lovely internet people. So I'm going to do a little bit of ruler quilting today, and we'll talk about what you're watching for and what you're doing. For those of you that have older Bernina, so the old metal exteriors, old 530s, 730s, 830s, 831s, 832s, 1130s, 1030s, 1260s, all those older machines that are technically what we call red box machines. Or Kappa Gamma is the other denotation on the feet for those. They made a ruler foot for you guys too. So it's available. We've got some in stock. The downside to some of those older machines is you don't have as much throat space. The space you have to work with your rulers is a little bit smaller. And I would have grabbed one of those machines, but I don't have one in the building for sale at the moment because they're old and they don't make them anymore. So we're going to demo this on a new machine. What you guys are looking at right now is the stitch plate area on Bernina 770. So this machine has a 10.5-inch throat, which is a really nice amount of space to work with for ruler quilting. The more space you have in the throat of your machine, the bigger the ruler you can work with. Ideally, your setup is going to be a super flat work area. So some of the tables that come with some of your Berninas are a little bit curved here. There's also bigger acrylic extension tables that would support more of your quilt, and they are a more flatbed surface. That would be a better option for ruler quilting, and it supports your quilt a little bit bigger. So those are called Sew Steady tables, or Bernina large acrylic extension tables. We have lots in stock for lots of different machines. We have lots available here. So a bigger, flatter area is going to be friendlier for ruler quilting. Not absolutely imperative, but definitely helpful. And then we're going to find the other thing. So normally for ruler quilting, you'll need to drop your feed dogs. On this particular machine, it's a drop. There's a button on the hand wheel side of the machine that's going to drop the feed dogs down below the bobbin case. And then normally at home, I grab a straight stitch plate, but I totally forgot to grab one here. And it'll work without one. So the 72 foot is the foot we're looking at right now. And the 72 foot is height adjustable. So the little brass wheel on this adjusts the height. Normally when they ship all the way up. And this is where lots of people run into issues their first time using the machine. So when you're setting up to do ruler quilting, when your presser foot is lowered all the way, if you press the start button on your machine, it'll drop your foot all the way down. The foot needs to be sitting just above the fabric. So right now I can almost shimmy a ruler underneath there. This is sitting way too high. A presser foot that's sitting way too high with ruler quilting is going to lead to skip stitches, weird flagging of the stitch where the stitch pulls back up out of the fabric. It might lead to tension issues, might lead to broken needles. So what you're looking for when you're setting presser foot height, and this is common even across the third-party ruler feet, is you want the foot low enough that it's holding the fabric down. That's the job of the presser foot, is to hold the fabric down on top, hold the fabric down underneath the foot so it doesn't ride up the needle as the stitch is being formed. So if this was, this is just like a fat quarter size piece of fabric right now, but if this was actually a pieced quilt top, you want to make sure whatever the thickest point in your quilt top is that you can get your ruler foot over it. So if this was a lumpy seam where you have a bunch of joins, you might need to account for that when you're setting the height of your ruler foot if you intend to quilt through that. So there's a little bit of experimentation that will be required. A really thin batting will require a different height than a really thick, lofty batting. So experiment as you go. Probably take it all the way to its lowest point and then come back up as necessary. This foot is not a stitch regulated foot. So generally when I set my speed on my machine with the ruler foot, I set it to about 1/3 speed. You'll need to experiment a little bit to find the speed that works best with your like the speed you're moving, how you're handling your rulers, the weight of your quilt. I like to quilt with my foot pedal to the metal, on my foot control. So those are all things to think about as you're getting started. And then you just get to go for it. Other things that I like to have to get going, I use quilting gloves. These is a pair of machiners. They're lovely. They're grippy tipped fingers. Those are those. Machiners. They come in different sizes. I probably need a new pair. This pair is quite worn. And the other thing I put on my rulers from a sit-down domestic standpoint, it doesn't come with the Bernina rulers, but I highly recommend it. Handi grip tape. It's just a little, almost like sandpaper adhesive that I'm going to put on the back of all my rulers. What that's going to do for you, I think I have one here without. So when we're doing ruler work, the ruler and the fabric need to move together on a domestic machine. The process is a little bit different up on a long arm, but these need to move together. And these acrylic rulers are pretty slippery. They're a thicker acrylic than what you're used to for your cutting rulers. Cutting rulers are usually a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch acrylic. These are 1/4 inch. But when they butt up against that foot, they don't run the risk of going underneath the foot. And that's why this foot has this great big lip on it in there. So the grip tape, when you put it on the back side of these rulers, then when you've got pressure on there, the fabric and the ruler move together much, much easier. So that's going to make you a whole lot happier. It makes me happier, way happier. And then the other thing we're looking to do, my feed dogs are dropped. I program the machine to have my needle stay in the down position. I'm just going to pull you guys up to the screen here for a second. Talk about some of the other things that you're going to want to change if your machine has this option. So if your machine has the option of programming it so the needle stops in the down position, program it so it's stopping in the down position. The other thing that sometimes happens, lots of people like to use the hover feature on their Bernina. Hover and the ruler foot are going to be your worst enemy. And from a technical standpoint, if you have the hover turned on where the presser foot lifts a little bit, when you take your foot off the gas, you run the risk of the ruler going underneath it, which will make you very unhappy. So under user settings, the gears, sewing settings, what happens when other things are going on, that's what that icon kind of means, and needle settings. So when the needle stops down, you want this foot to stay all the way down on top of your fabric so you don't run the risk of your ruler stopping underneath. So on this machine, that's that first option. The hover is usually the middle one. So if you've got that turned on, you'll want to turn that. Go back to this one. You're much, much happier when. And then I'm just doing a straight stitch on here. The feed dogs are dropped, so they're not controlling the stitch length. The speed that you're moving the fabric in relation to the speed that the machine is moving is going to determine your stitch length. I'm going to start with the most impressive thing first, and we'll talk about some of the other things after. I'm just going to start in the middle of my quilt with circles. So the circle sets with the sit-down set come nestled in a small enough size to fit inside your machine. And you can quilt on the inside and the outside of these, which is really cool. So I like to pull my bobbin thread up when I get started, using the back kick on the foot pedal. And I'm going in and grabbing that bobbin thread, which is white apparently. That's all good. And then right away I'm just going to take a couple stitches just in place to secure that stitch before I try and figure out what my ruler is going to do next. So on the ruler, because this is considered a high shank system, these high shank rulers or full long arm rulers are the 1/4 inch acrylic. They fit all the way underneath this foot, even at the back end there. Finger might not fit in that spot there. So be careful. It doesn't feel good when you pinch your finger in there. You can ask me how I know, but I can definitely tell you it's the hard way. So what we're doing here, we're going to move the fabric and the rulers together and keep the ruler touching the edge of the foot. So on this foot, from the needle position out to any of that exterior is a 1/4 inch all the way around. So our stitch is going to be 1/4 inch from the edge of the ruler. Might need to reposition as you go. You don't need to be spinning and turning the quilt. And then you have a lovely little circle. Circles are also really, really hard to make perfect from any other standpoint. It doesn't matter which direction you're going, whichever way makes sense. And again, the stitch length is going to be determined by how fast you're moving. I can do a really little one. There's also ovals. Ovals are fun, but ovals don't have to just be ovals. Lots of these rulers have markings, so this one has a marking at the 45s. Most of these ones that nest, they're easier to handle if you keep the innards in. Oops. They're also easier if you have a piece of masking tape with you when you're keeping the innards in. We can do big loopy swirls, all the same size. My favorite rulers in the mix is this one. So this is one of the other rulers in the Bernina set. It has a nice double smaller curve. It has an inside curve. It has an outside curve. Got a really shallow curve. It's lovely. Flower petal shapes. It's fun. I'm just gonna go for a little meander and go do one of my favorite things to do with this. One of my favorite ways to use my rulers is to do repeated shapes and make kind of like starburst shapes. I have a peacock. Maybe that's kind of what it looks like. So, those are some of the cool things just in a freehand sense use of the rulers. I'm going to go off into what I pretend marked as a quilt block. So it's a little 1/4 square triangle spot. And how could we use these triangles and some of the markings on our rulers to our advantage? I'm going to go back to my ovals. I'm going to go to my circles. So with some of the markings on here, we can get circles centered. There's markings inside these circles that show us the mark lines. So we could get this lined up right bang on and do concentric circles in here, which I think that sounds like fun. So, fun little experiment with doing part of a design with the ruler and leaving part of it open. There's so many options. It's a lot of fun. Lots and lots and lots of fun. And if you really like the precision of it, it's just great. I'm a huge fan. Normally I bring a straight line ruler with me, but straight line ruler quilting allows you to do things like stitch in the ditch on a block this size without having to turn your whole quilt around every time you spin the walking foot around. That's brilliant. Really, really smart. Really a smart way to quilt. Other things that you can get to work with your number 72 foot, which might make you super happy. If you like couching, there's couching inserts. So these fit up into the bottom of the 72 foot. There's also echo quilting clips. So these would clip on around the exterior of this foot and allow you to echo quilt around your rulers and have a little bit different spacing. So those are also super neat, and those are available for that. This is straight line from the frame set. It works a little bit differently than the straight line that comes with the sit down, but it will totally do the trick. I'm going to start nicely in that corner. So as we're working through a block on here, not the block I have marked, we'll go up to this one. And keep that ruler nice and straight. Do our ditch work. I'm a huge fan of cross hatching because it's ridiculously fiddly and super time consuming and puts way more thread on your quilt than anybody thinks you should have put on your quilt. But that's not the point. The point is to have fun. So I'm going to go back here and do a little bit of cross hatching. Thread on that. And then look at that great texture. So much texture in there. Makes me so happy. So if you have questions or you want to get the ruler foot for your machine, give us a call. We also have ruler feet for Handi quilters. The ruler foot for Handi quilters, the Sure Foot. gonna guys. Surefoot is the Handi quilter version. If you've got a different brand that doesn't have its own foot, we do have some third-party ruler feet from Westerly. For this, we'll need to know whether your machine is a low shank ankle on your presser foot shaft or a high shank. There's a few oddball ones that would be a high shank special because the distance between the presser foot shaft and the needle shaft is different. But these would work as well, and they're also height adjustable depending on which fabric and which machine you're running. So there's a few options. These two take, this low shank one can only fit the thinner acrylic rulers, quilting rulers, which are about an 1/8, just because there's not space under the foot to get more of them through. So pricing on the 72 foot, your best option is to call the store. That is ruler quilting in a nutshell. It's a riot. Like I said, there's lots of rulers. The Bernina set's really nice to start with because it's a really good assortment of shapes to work with. There's a squiggle, that 4-in-1 curve. That one is in there. And there's a really good straight line tool in the sit-down set. The frame set straight has a very different function, but it works differently on a frame than it does on a sit-down. So that's an option as well. And if you want stitch regulation when you're ruler quilting, I would highly recommend looking at the Q series machines. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. And thank you for joining me. Be safe, be kind, be calm. See you guys next week.